Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the SOCAN, Ashland Climate Action Project, and SOCAN is Southern Oregon Climate Action Now. Welcome to the 2020 Ashland Climate Voter Project. My name is Lori Kaplan, and I'm the coordinator for this event. And tonight we will be discussing climate issues with candidates for City Council positions 1 and 5. We decided we could make it work with having all 4 here together. And remember that with Ashland, you can vote for all the city council candidates. All the candidates are at large. So this year you'll be voting for position 1, position 3, and position 5. Before I get started, I first want to acknowledge that the community of Ashland is built upon the traditional homelands of the Tacoma, Shasta, and Klamath Basin peoples. And I also have to acknowledge, of course, that these past few weeks have been really devastating for the residents of the Rogue Valley. We're also reminded of how we are very deeply connected in this valley. We're talking about Ashland tonight, but we're all of our communities are very, very connected. We've rightfully been focused on addressing the needs of those directly affected by our fires, and we're all concerned about the next fire. But I just want to point out as well that the increasing prevalence of fires is not just a symptom of climate change. Fires also add greatly to the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, adding further urgency to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions in every way possible. We need to prioritize to get the biggest impact, but it's also true that every action matters. So our topic for this evening could not be more serious or more timely. However, I believe in positive thinking, and I believe also that it takes a lot of courage to run for public office. We have wonderful candidates this year, and I'm so pleased that they're here with us. So I'm going to do my best to also make it this a light evening, just keep us up, our spirits up, because we're going to need all the strength we can get. So I want to make sure everyone knows about the chat function. If you go to the bottom of your screen, and I'm talking to the attendees as well as our panelists, you'll see a little button that says chat. That's how you can communicate. In fact, you can go ahead and say hello now. Anyone can type in there. And when you do it, make sure you direct it to all panelists and attendees if you want to reach everyone. If you just want to reach a particular person, you can do that. So, if anyone's up for the challenge, go ahead and put a little message in there in the chat to say hello to each other. And yay, there we go.
Okay, me not so good. I'm upside down. So, hi everybody.
You don't look upside down to me. So, okay. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of the rules real quick, so the audience knows. Yay. Love to see people interacting. Okay, so all the questions were sent to the panel, to our candidates in advance. So we will not have any live questions tonight. We are pretty strict on time, keeping everyone will have the same amount of time to answer the questions. And I want to thank our, even though everyone is muted, I want to thank everyone who is here this evening to listen to this event. It shows how people care very deeply about climate change, and they're here to bear witness to this discussion. Of course, we're also recording it so we can share it with our neighbors later. So I think we'll have a lot of people viewing this in the future. Also, I will be running some fun little climate quiz questions during the break up the discussion, give our candidates a little bit of a break. So be paying attention for when you're going to be quizzed on your climate knowledge. So I think those are all. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, yes. So when the recording is available, it will be on the SOCAN website, which is socan.eco, socan.eco, and also on their YouTube channel. So you'll be able to find it there. And we will send the link around to everyone so you can share it. Okay, enough with the introductions. Tonight we're discussing climate issues with the candidates for Ashland City Council positions number 1 and number 5. First, please join me in welcoming Andrew Card and Paula Hyatt, candidates for City Council position 1. Raise, Andy and Paula. And then for City Council position number 5, we have Gina and Jessica. Gina DuQuenne and Jessica Kensinger. There they are. Okay, great. So thank you all for being here with us tonight, candidates and audience, to talk about these important issues. So as a first step, we are going to have opening statements from each one of the candidates to introduce themselves and talk just a little bit about climate. And I believe, Gina, you're first.
Thank you so much, Lori. Good evening, friends, and thank you, SoCan, for this opportunity. I'm very grateful to be here this evening, and I may not know everything there is to know about climate change. However, as I learn more, I will champion environmental stewardship. I'm grateful to be here. My name is Gina DuQuenne. I'm running for seat number 5 for Ashland City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula?
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for attending tonight to talk about this very important topic. And thank you to all the members of SoCan for organizing this, that we may all get together. I come to this race actually originally from being from upstate New York. We understand snowpack very well up there. We're closer to the Canadian border than to the city. And throughout my career and over my time in industry and in business specific, I have gone to many corners of our country. I have evacuated fires from not from South Carolina, excuse me, from San Diego. And then while living in South Carolina, I've had to pull on the rain boots just because we had a full moon, so all the streets would flood. So I have seen directly the impacts that climate change can have on our communities. And as a mom of a little one, a 6-year-old, having seen these changes in such a short period of time, admittedly, I'm very concerned. I'm concerned for her well-being and for her ability to raise her family going forward and whatever choices she chooses to make. So these topics and these issues are very near and dear to my heart because they impact our future, but also the livelihood of our generations thereafter. So thank you again for organizing this tonight, that we could all get together and discuss these important issues. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. I see this only as a start. So with that, I say thank you, and I look forward to the questions and discussion to come.
Great. Thank you, Paula. Andy.
Great. Yes, thank you, SoCan, for putting this on, and hello, everybody who's watching. You know, climate change is one of the biggest issues of our generation. I happen to be a millennial, so I know for my generation, this is the most important issue. And I also plan to live in Ashland for another 50 to 60 years. And I'm worried. I'm worried about wildfires. I'm worried about what's going to happen if we continue, if the global temperatures keep increasing and we don't maintain our forest lands. So to me, it's all about starting now and investing now so we are prepared, you know, 20, 30 years down the line. And so as a city councilor, that's something I'm really going to be looking at. How can we secure more funding, more grants? And we need to, you know, really invest and go all in. So I'm excited to talk about climate today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Kensinger. I'm running for position 5. I come from a long line of conservationists, and I feel that we need to be far-sighted in our ways of identifying clean energy sources, and not only that, but reducing the impact of our consumption, even though it doesn't reduce carbons, because, you know, we have our consumption is impacting and influencing people in other countries. You know, we have to think also about our ocean, not just our air. I think solar, the biggest bang for our buck is going to be solar and electric vehicles, which I think we should be preparing for. You know, I'd like to take our weaknesses, which is consumption, and turn it into a strength. And in order to get all this stuff done, I've been working for 7 years at recruiting climate candidates and climate voters. And that's just one of the passions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So I'd like to start with a question, topic that's on everybody's mind these days: fire safety and risk reduction. Our attendees sent their questions in advance So we shared those with the candidates and asked them to just review the questions that were sent and decide how they would like to answer the question. So each candidate will have 2.5 minutes to talk about their perspectives on fires. And Paula, could you please go first?
Of course, thank you. The list of questions that was submitted was very comprehensive, and I'll be speaking to the first two specifically around communication and the role of our city government in response. And when I look at this, coming out of the events of the last 2 weeks, I see us in 2 lanes. The first being, what do we need to continue to do? And I feel that the work that Ashland Forest Resiliency does in conjunction with Loma Katsi, the U.S. Forest Service and others is important work, and that work needs to continue. It does a lot up in our watershed to maintain old growth forests, to clear away underbrush, to maintain environment and habitat. It is not just a clearing situation, but rather one that is meant to be restorative for the long term. And I feel that needs to continue, and I support that. Similarly, I think our FireWise programs here in Ashland are beyond valuable. I was about a half mile from where the fire started, and I have to say my FireWise plan worked very well, and I'm very grateful for having those resources at the ready and for being able to compile that plan and act on that plan. My husband was able to notify residents in our neighborhood while I was able to pull together the things that we needed to get our family out safely. So I'm very grateful to those who put that program together and continue to maintain it. And I think that we also have opportunity to grow that, but it is an excellent resource that should be continued. Now, where do we go to improve safety? What are our next steps? I see a great need for additional communication and coordination with Ashland on the county level, with Jackson County. We have a lot of communities here that are on the border of Jackson County lands, and we do not have coordinated weed abatement. We do not have coordinated fire breaks. And I know when Almeida started, we are Billings Ranch subdivision and also our friends in Quiet Village, we're right on that margin together. And there was no clear cut, there was no buffer, and it just started to blow right across. So I do feel that there is a place for Ashland's municipal government to work with our county government and improve coordinated weed abatement and fire breaks for mutually beneficial ends, because I do see it does not only impact Ashland, but it impacts our friends and neighbors in Jackson County. And then finally, I do think we need to look at a communications director. We've had one in the past. We do not have one now. And I think it is something that we need to revisit going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andy?
So I think Ashland has actually been doing a great job with our watershed management. And I know that was like one of the questions is how is Ashland doing on that sort of management? And so we have a partnership and we have Ashland Forest Plan or Fire Resiliency Plan. That's a 10-year project that is, I think that started around 2010. I think we need to continue with that. I think it's extremely important, and what that looks like is more like logging, prescribed burns, and forest monitoring and thinning projects. And on top of that, I think Paul is absolutely right about a communications director. You have programs like Nixle that if you don't have cell service, then how do you get the communication? And working with the county, where is our public broadcasting system, our emergency broadcasting system? That's typically over the radio or television. That was lacking, and it's concerning. And I think as a city, we need to have better communication and figure out why that happened and how that cannot happen again. And furthermore, with exits, roads coming out of the city, we need to find a way to build more roads out of the city. Currently, we don't really have any, and that could mean having to carve through some vegetation, create some more access roads, and certainly we cannot have I-5 traffic be diverted through Ashland. So we need to have a plan, whether that was a county decision or an ODOT decision. We need to make sure the city of Ashland has these communication lanes set up so that never happens again. So those are kind of like the main areas that I'm looking at as a city councilor.
Great, thank you, Andy. Jessica?
All right. I was wondering about this question because I didn't really get the update about it being different from the original, but I do have an answer about the fires. My first priority would be to mitigate fires. We must develop a regional Bear Creek fire management plan and strengthen city ordinances that to require defensible space. And also we could add more metal to our houses because it wasn't just the vegetation that caused the fires, also like the homes that were burning. So we can address that. Now, second thing to do would be to adapt to what has been done. We need a Bear Creek Gateway non-native vegetation, just blackberry abatement plan to restore the land that was burned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Gina.
So I would really like to echo what what has already been said. It's so important that we work closely together with county, and I am totally on board with evacuation because not only was the alarm was not set, and how many people, I'm grateful that there weren't any lives, not more lives lost because of that. But I am completely on board with what has been said. I'd love to be able to implement a true evacuation plan so everybody is on the ready. I feel like I know we have the alerts on our cell phones, but everybody doesn't have a cell phone. Everybody doesn't have that ability. So my thing is how, as city council, how do we reach everyone in the community in our border cities and let them know that this is where we are and this is the plan to get out 1, 2, or 3. However, the evacuation, working with ODOT, however we need to do that, that needs to happen because Ashland is right here on the 5, one way in, one way out. We've got to be able to take care of that before this happens again, if it does.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, now for our next questions, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, which isn't a lot of time, but I know that you can do it. You're up for the challenge. And then after this question, we'll have a little poll just to break things up. So this question, and Andy will go first on this one. Is the city on target in hitting the goals of the 2017 Ashland Climate Energy Action Plan, which we call the SEEP? And why or why not? And given the city's fiscal challenges, how would you, as a city councilor, ensure that the city fully implements the SEEP in its own operations and in the community? Andy?
Yeah. So I would say not as good as we could be. In fact, I think our reduction in emissions is flat. I've had a few meetings with the Climate Commission, and what it seems like, so our action plan is good. It's really robust. It's comprehensive. I think a city like Eugene or Portland would produce something in similar nature. However, we lack those resources. I think our aspirations are a little bit more higher than the resources we have. Now, what do you do about that? I think first off, you have to look at what resources do we have that we can allocate to SEEP, and how can we get more resources in terms of grants, or do we raise taxes, or do we find additional revenue streams that the community is up for? Like that's the important thing. Does the community really want this, or is it just good enough to have this great plan? And so we really need to look at that. Now, what we could do is, well, what I would do is I would look at kind of the main areas that would have the biggest impact on the reduction of emissions. And so those would be, like solar farms, community solar projects. We could definitely continue city incentive programs. We need more funding to those. Those have been excellent. And I would say introduce energy retrofit programs via loans or grants.
Thank you, Andy. Jessica?
All right, so far the city has created a commission and hired a full-time employee and developed an excellent plan. And at this point, we've got the city council and the staff seeing things through the SEEP, like the SEEP lens, which is absolutely progress. The city heavily influences adaptation strategies, but for mitigation, it's a little bit more difficult because we're just a small city. It would be better to engage with other governments and develop a regional plan. I also think it's important that we showcase green businesses, the ones we have now, and ones that we want to come here and bring some living wage paying green jobs. And in order to make all that happen, I'm down for a gas tax. I think that's in our future, whether we like it or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Gina.
For the sake of time, I'm going to read my answer to stay on point. And I do believe that the city has made measurable progress. However, we need to move forward aggressively to get where we want to be in 2050 because there is no plan B. Part 2 of the question being on city council to ensure that the city fully implements the SEEP in the future, I would make a cross-cutting strategy. Number 1, educate and empower the public. Number 2, mainstream and integrate climate concentrations. And 3, engage with other governments and organizations around climate policies and action, collaborating with our neighbors and community and working with their climate programs and also seeking funding in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Paula.
So the City Council was provided an update in March of 2019, and unfortunately we are falling short of the goals as outlined, but I still feel the nature of the plan was sustainable progress, and we have done that in many ways. The uptake of electrification has been faster than expected in terms of electric vehicles. We're seeing decreases in consumption thanks to groups such as SOCAN and others. We're also seeing our municipal buildings are being retrofitted and the electrification happening there as well. So we have some very positive, measurable engagement within our community as well. All these things speak to that sustainable progress. Now, the second part of the question on how to implement, I think there's 3 large pieces to that. First and foremost is partnership. Partnership between the city and the citizens. The city is only 2% of what we can cut. 98% comes from businesses and our citizens. So there must be a partnership. We can't only measure what the city accomplishes. We have to do it together. Second, resources, and not just in terms of money. We also need staff time. We need the expertise of folks like Stu Green and others in order to be successful. And then finally, I want to say empowerment. We have many cross-functional teams that look at climate. And I think the only way that we're going to be successful is not just to accept like looking for recommendations, but to provide actionable outcomes that these groups can do so that they are empowered to move our plan forward together.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. So I just want to mention to everyone that when you mouse up to the top of your screen, you have 2 options. You can have it in speaker view, where you just see the person speaking, or you can have it in gallery view where you can see everyone and we look a little bit like, what was that show? Musical, whatever, I don't know.
Hollywood Squares.
There we go, thank you. I always think it looks like Hollywood Squares, so that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna have a quick poll just to see who's paying attention. So poll master. See if my poll master can pull up a poll for us. Okay, does everybody see the poll? Okay, so the question here is, which of the following ecosystems stores the most carbon? And your choices are tropical rainforest, grassland, Australian eucalypt forest, or boreal temporal forest. And while people are voting, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next question, and we'll see the answer after we finish this question. Okay? The next question is, and Gina, you'll be going first. What's 3 specific things would you do as city councilor to make Ashland more environmentally sustainable while promoting economic and social, oh, wait a minute. Oh, it's Jessica first, I'm sorry. sorry, I'm trying to get this all right. What 3 specific things would you do as city councilor to make Ashland more environmentally sustainable while promoting economic and social resilience?
Right. First, I'm going to prepare and adapt the buildings that we have for climate change and maximize the efficiency of equipment and operation for both residential and municipal units. It's something that needs to be done. 2, I want to further consider using Ashland's fiber network to transition to smart meters. So to provide us with the precise data that we need to make essential adjustments and policy decisions. Lastly, I think that we should partner with Recology. Again, even though recycling doesn't reduce carbons, it's still important. So I'd like to partner with Recology, an industry leader, and developing an advanced recycling center in Ashland that could be a generator and original asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Now, Gina.
Hey.
Thank you.
We're at number 2, making Ashland more environmentally sustainable. I will champion the Climate Energy Action Plan and continue to move progressively towards a solution. By championing their goals, number 1, in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and number 2, reducing consumption. And looking at consumption is a huge offender of climate change, and support locally produced products, getting us closer to that 40/70 goal that we want to be in 2050. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Gina. Paula.
With regard to what we can do going forward, we consume on a linear basis. We purchase, we maintain, we service, and then we get rid of things. So I would like to see us start in terms of decreasing consumption and looking at lease versus buy where we can. I think there are many places within our municipality where that is an option. Second, I would also like to look at programs that are regenerative in nature. And by that, I mean the byproduct or the waste product from one process being input into another. And if that process then can be monetized, that revenue stream can be used to support our incentive projects. So certain things that use byproducts, you could have community composting that then in turn sells the fertilizer to our gardeners and our farmers and the like. And even things like coffee grounds can be developed into burning logs that reduce greenhouse gas emissions less than wood burn hotter and longer. So these are things that we could look at from a regenerative perspective. And then similarly, third, electrification. Clearly there is a lot of value in electrification, and we've seen a fast uptake in that with our electric vehicles. So having designated parking, the ability to charge your car, and we would do that as fee for service. And the fees collected would go towards the kilowatt hours, and then they would also go towards sustaining our incentive programs. Again, regenerative in nature. So those are the 3 types of ways that I would like to move forward and help our community with regard to decreased consumption, electrification, and regenerative economics. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andy.
So I think I look at it in terms of incentives. I think human nature, we respond very well to incentives, and I think we can get a whole lot done within our community if the city has more incentives. So a few things to think about are energy retrofit programs. So you can look at those as comprehensive retrofits. You can look at insulation, ductless heat pumps. And the way that would work is the city can secure grants or offer low interest rate loans to community. And then that could be to businesses as well. And so that would incentivize them to do a retrogrid, which actually is a lot cheaper, or can be a lot cheaper in the long run, just to kind of update some systems, replace some windows and your heat pumps. And then secondly, continue with more of the other city incentive programs where you look at where people come down and look at your yards and look at water usages. I think those need more funding to be more effective. And then lastly, I love community solar projects because it's more efficient. You don't have to put a panel on every single roof. You have solar farms. And then that allows renters actually to also tap into that solar energy. I think those 3 things would really make a giant impact on our community.
Thank you, Andy. Great. Now we get to share the results of our poll. We see how people voted and find out what the right answer is. So the correct answer is the boreal temperate rainforest, which about half of people got right. That's good. And I want to say tonight's questions came directly from Alan Journay, who is a co-facilitator of SOCAN and a real scientist, unlike me, who I'm just a very concerned citizen. But the answer is, contrary to what many of us learned in high school, because so much carbon is stored in our soils, boreal temperate coniferous rainforests store the most carbon. And where are the boreal temperate rainforests? Right here in our neighborhood. So we have a very important ecosystem that we're working with. Okay, on to the next question. And Gina, you'll be first on this one. This is, what 3 things would you do on the city council to bring green jobs to Ashland?
It's my understanding that Ashland already has at least 12 green businesses. I support green businesses. I would support the green businesses that are already here to grow and create more living wage jobs. I would also work with Ashland Chamber of Commerce to encourage green businesses to move their companies here. Ashland is very conducive for green businesses. I know that businesses going green in Ashland is voluntary. However, I would like to incentivize businesses to go green. It's good for us, it's good for our children, and it's good for the planet.
Thank you, Gina. Paula.
The first step in bringing green jobs, I feel, is engaging our experts. We do have many green employers here in the Valley and in Ashland, Loma Katsi, True South Solar, among many others. And I do feel that they have a wealth of knowledge to bring to the table that would help us to recruit others into Ashland and the surrounding area. Second, I would want to leverage existing businesses. We do, for example, a lot of construction, and there are a lot of avenues within construction and renovation that are green in nature. Everything from the studs right on out to the roofing and the paint. So we have a lot of avenues that we can use to extend. So they're already here. So let's build them, let's grow them out. And then finally, I would say we need to look at our traded sector. So traded sector is where the goods or the services are produced here in Ashland, but they're consumed somewhere outside of Ashland. But the money comes back to Ashland, and it is spent here within our community and within the Rogue Valley. Business services in the traded sector would include engineering like environmental engineering consulting and the like. So these types of potentially even work from home, given all that we've learned from COVID-19, can very readily be brought into Ashland or expanded upon here in Ashland to have a broad and lasting impact on green jobs for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Paula. Andy?
Yeah, I want to look into promoting more green tourism in Ashland. I think tourism is very robust here, and I think there's ways we can incorporate that. And I think that would bring a lot of exciting companies like ecotourism. We have within the wineries, cannabis fields, there's all sorts of industries where we can incorporate that. I think you'd have a lot of exciting people that would want to be involved. And also we can look at fun projects like, I talk a lot about solar fields, but solar fields that could create hydrogen gas is an example that could be interesting to pursue. And then of course, just recruiting really like talented, smart professionals who want to live in Ashland, who have expertise in, sustainability. How do we recruit those people more to our city? How can the city council be more sort of business friendly and progressive and forward thinking? And, part of that is supporting our local green businesses. Because what you have is when you do have strong support for those local green businesses, they, when people want to move into Ashland, the first places they're going to start is talk to the Chamber of Commerce and talk to the businesses already operating in Ashland, because they want to find out, is Ashland a good place to do business? And so if we prove that, I think we can recruit more green industry.
Thank you, Andy. Jessica?
Well, I completely agree about the ecotourism. I'm all about tourism, but I didn't write about that one. But I would like to see Ashland position itself as the regional green leader and do things from an economic development standpoint that are necessary to attract the green services and businesses and industries that provide living wage jobs. Second, I'm gonna go back to the advanced recycling. A lot of the plastics that we use are not able to be recycled right now. And I think that Ashland is a great place to invest in a recycling center that makes use of these additional plastics. And one of my favorites would be to make pellets, you know, plastic pellets that can be added to asphalt to make them more flexible and resilient. And lastly, I want financial considerations to bring in a hemp manufacturer, because I've been fighting for hemp for a long, long time, unsuccessfully. Now that it's here, it feels like everyone's just going to the next thing. What's next? But I think we need to capitalize on hemp and bring green jobs in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear all the different ideas that you all have, and really appreciate the thinking that's going on here. Thank you so much. The next question is about bikeability and walkability. How 3 steps that you think could help promote further developments in walkability and bikeability in Ashland. Paula.
Pedestrian bike-friendly cities have 3 things in common. They have distance, protection, and integration. So is the distance between locations such that you would walk or bike it? The second is, are those pathways protected? And can the folks traverse them without being injured? And third is it integrated? Meaning you can walk one place and hop on a bus, or you can bike, bus, walk, these types of things. So it needs to be integrated. How do we do that? On the short term, I think we leverage our current street plan within our capital improvement projects. Our ADA requirements have us putting in the sidewalks and the bike lanes. We need to continue with that. Chevrons where we're not wide enough. Second, I think we need to connect our education institutions. Our public schools, we have the 3 elementary, Willow Wind, Siskiyou School, John Muir, our middle school and our high school, and SOU. If we can have corridors that connect our education points, we can cover most of our, if not all of our community. So I see them as that opening to bringing us to pedestrian friendly. And finally, long-term, the best thing for pedestrian bike friendly is high density, mixed use zoning. And that's something that we really aren't set up for right now. But long-term we could be, and we could make our decisions through that lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Andy.
Yeah, so first I would say resume our transportation system plan, which is a public works project. We also need to increase our pedestrian infrastructure and make sure all of our biking and walking infrastructure is safe. That's the most important part. And then thirdly is education programs. And that's, educating the public, but that starts with their schools, with, our kids and teenagers about, the importance of walking and biking. So there's a lot of implications. There's health implications. There are sustainability implications. So you have less tailpipe exhaust. So there's a plethora of reasons why biking and walking is the better alternative to driving. And so I think we do need a comprehensive education system for that.
Great. Jessica.
So when I think of the Ashland biker or cyclist, I kind of imagine like a really wealthy guy with a Jones bike, and I think there's citizens that kind of resent some of the money that's been spent, like for example with the bike lanes, the reduction of the regular road to make space for bike lanes. But we need to remember that there's a lot more than just the super wealthy that need these bike lanes. We've got students, we've got homeless people, we've got all kinds of people that want cycle-related offerings. And the first thing that I would do, something that could give dignity to all kinds of people, not just cyclists, would be the showers, lockers, and safe bike storage. Additionally, I would like to reduce the speed limit, as well as adding more bike lanes and just being out there for bike lanes. Reducing the speed limit is good. And lastly, I want to expand the connector, which is in a test program right now. It needs to have expanded hours. It needs to have an option for people who are carrying heavy things. So if you have no car, how do you get your groceries? Because you're only supposed to have a small amount of space. So just little considerations like that, plus adding an electric shuttle, expanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina.
Yes, something that I would love to contribute to this is that the 3 steps that I would take to develop a safe, walkable, bikeable infrastructure is, first off, I really like what the city has done with expanding the dining on the plaza in this COVID-19 world. I love that people are allowed to enjoy lunch under the sun or dinner under the stars. I believe this would be an attractive, permanent structure. I love that, and it would take away from some of the parking. But number 2 and number 3, number 2, I look at the normal project. Number 3, I look at the transit triangle, creating an urban form land use by making this a mixed-use neighborhood in Ashland, more bike and pedestrian friendly. I know these 2 projects have been on the table for a while. So as we move forward with building both projects, I believe we need to keep that in mind. It's totally doable in the normal project in the transit triangle.
Thank you, Gina. Okay, we're going to run another quick poll. Get our audience involved here. See if my poll master can help me out. Okay, this is the next poll. Which of the following gases has the highest global warming potential? Carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, chlorofluorocarbons, or methane? Y'all can think about that, and I'm going to move on to the next question. Should the city continue to provide free Firewise audits, energy and water conservation incentives and audits, and solar installation incentives? What changes would you want to make to these programs, and how would these changes affect the city's ability to achieve our climate goals? And this question is relevant also for people who believe that we need to cut services in Ashland. So Andy, can you go first on this?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in these city incentives. I think we need to find more grant money to make the incentives more appealing for people. We need more education around them. I'd be curious about what percentage of our community knows that they exist. So how well are we presenting these services to our community? And furthermore, how do we get low income and renters access to these services? I think that's huge. Secondly, how can we expand upon them? So think of transportation, electrification incentives. So you could say incentives for EVs, so electric vehicles, possibly that are used under $30,000. So incentives specific to that category. So it's not just people with money who can take advantage of these incentives, but those that are lower income earners who still want to contribute. I think these are all great ways, but if we need to be more aggressive in the funding, which means more grant money. And that's the way that you could really see these city services make a huge impact on our community.
Thanks, Andy. Jessica.
All right, so I definitely feel that the city needs to maintain the current level of services and keep their eye out for new innovations. But what I see more importantly is a disconnection all right, let me go back. So as a census worker, I was walking down the street and I saw there's like it looked like a fountain just in the ground. There's water shooting out of one and there's water shooting out of two. And, you know, I felt guilty about it, but I didn't go and knock on anyone's door to find out who was responsible for this water, because people in Ashland really aren't like that. They wouldn't have appreciated me knocking on their door. And I think that's one of the main problems we need to address before we get into doing more and more programs. I think that we need to be nicer to one another so that we can tackle these larger problems. And I think that once we are able to maintain our relationships with each other, I think the city needs to step in with training and programs and actually real land for gardening so that people can come together and make their own food, which is healthy and it's healthy in more than just one way. So that's where I would start. That's where I would focus. I would focus on inefficient water use and finding solutions among ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Gina.
Yes, I do support the contributions of the city programs. The only addition that I would make is educating the residents of Ashland. I don't believe that most people in the community know that this is available to them. I would also like to see the cash incentives for interconnected solar electric systems be a little higher and equal amongst residents and commercial solar installation. SEEP has already laid down the groundwork. It will be my job as city council to work with others to follow up and reach these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Paula.
So I say yes to all three. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, FireWise plan was huge for my family. So I have big gratitude and wish to continue and grow that. But I see these programs more specifically as the merger of education and opportunity. It's where they intersect. Our community provides these opportunities and they educate our citizens so that they know where to start, because sometimes these projects seem so big, you don't know where to go. So in terms of like energy audit, you have defined tangible steps that you can take. And I see a lot of value in that. So certainly would want to move forward, because the whole point within SEEP is not just to incent because you're getting a check, but to incent because it's truly a behavioral change that is sustainable on the go forward. And I feel that these programs do a lot to change minds and hearts in terms of treating our environment, not rather as an asset, but more as a relationship. And so I feel that these programs certainly need to continue. And I would also say, like in the beginning, where I mentioned we need partnership, resources, and empowerment, this is the perfect place to step out into that. The city partners with the folks who have the energy audit. The resources can come through regenerative economics. And finally, I would say that the empowerment comes in the fact that you have the audit plan to work off of. So thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to share the results of our last poll. And one thing for all of us, this is a learning process. These issues are complex, and we kind of owe it to ourselves and our children, our future generations, to continue our learning process. So this poll is going to be a teachable moment for us. The most common answer here was methane, but the correct answer was one that nobody guessed, which is chlorofluorocarbons. So global warming potential is also known as carbon dioxide equivalent, measures the relative warming impact of other gases relative to carbon dioxide. So we always talk about our carbon footprint and everything. So the carbon dioxide has a global warming potential of 1. Nitrous oxide has a global warming potential of 300. Chlorofluorocarbons, which are what are in refrigerants, are at several thousand times of carbon. Methane is worse than carbon. On a 20-year basis, it's 86 times that the global warming potential of carbon on a 20-year basis, and 34 on a 100-year basis. So I want to put a plug in here for SOCAN's Master Climate Protector course that they, yay. This has really done a huge job for educating so many people here in Southern Oregon to really understand these issues, so we really know what we're talking about. I think one thing we've seen some climate activism is people just going after carbon when methane, which leaks during the transmission drilling process for natural gas, is actually worse than carbon. So it's really important that we understand these issues, or we know who to go to get the answer when we're trying to do policies, to solve the problems and not make them worse. So this is good. Okay, we're getting there, kids. We're doing a great job. Thank you. Everybody's being really concise, and that is really great. All right, we have 3 more questions. Do you support taking steps to expand the use of solar power in Ashland in the coming years? We have had some talk about it already tonight. If yes, as a city councilor, what would be your approach to achieving this? And Jessica, it's your turn to go first.
All right, so I absolutely support taking steps to expand solar. I think that we're on our way to requiring it for new construction, for residential and business. Moreover, I think Ashland would do well to look for and encourage new ways to incentivize businesses and owners to install multiple smaller solar installations, as opposed to a larger one that's going to cost us millions of dollars that we don't really have. Such as, inheriting the old public-private solar array in 20 years on the inheritance property, as was originally suggested. I think we need to be going towards small-scale solar. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Jessica. I think, is it Gina? You're next.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do. I do support the steps to expand the use of solar power. Keeping it local, I would reach out to True South Solar, True South Solar, and see how we can collaborate with home builders and developers working together to build a more zero energy housing. Looking into the near future, I would support the statewide community solar program that will be available to all Oregon residents. I know there will be some financial hurdles. However, perhaps we can develop new models, new policies to facilitate community interest and investments. Once we get the buy-in from the community through education and empowerment, I feel like we could take this far. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Paula.
Well, I think this is the perfect opportunity where we need to look downfield to 2025, 2028, when our BPA contract comes up. So Bonneville Power Authority is who we receive our power from. They're the broker. And as many of you know, we run on hydroelectric. So that's low carbon, but it's not renewable. And we want to get towards the renewable. When this contract comes back up, currently there are penalties that if you don't take the total amount you've contracted for, you have to pay. And we don't want to be in that position. So we need to start planning now to bring solar in as part of the solution so that when it does come time to look at that contract again, we're ready. And we're not up against a deadline and just having to take what is given to us, but rather being proactive in choosing the renewable sources we want, not just the low carbon that's being offered. I also feel, in conjunction with that pre-planning, we need to continue with our solar incentive program. We need to continue with electrification uptake in terms of electric vehicles, most of which can all be powered from solar panels. And then finally, I would say, I love the idea of co-op roofs, which is essentially community solar, but on a smaller scale, because this opens up the opportunity to access these renewable sources for those that may not be homeowners. And that's a big part of moving this forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Paula. Andy.
Yes. So I think, yes, we do need to expand. I think the city has actually been doing a really good job with its solar initiative. And we have great solar companies in Ashland. But I really believe in optimal minimal, meaning what is the most efficient way to expand solar? Is that put solar panels on all the roofs of Ashland? Or can we cultivate not miniature, but solar farms of different sizes where then we can connect that to residents and businesses. I really love that idea. And to what Paula said, that is a big issue that our contracts are up around, I think, 2026 or so. So we really need to look at that and prepare for that. And I think solar farms is the best way to go. I know we have looked at a project, I think, across from the freeway on a certain parcel of land. I really want to get that going. We've spent a lot of money with consultation on that, and I want to really see that move forward.
Great, thank you, everyone. Okay. 2 more questions. And Gina, you'll be first on this one. What 3 strategies or programs could the city implement to make climate action more affordable to renters or low-income residents?
Yes. The 3 things I would implement to make climate change more affordable to renters and low-income residents is, number 1, have affordable home builders and developers build homes that are energy sufficient with solar co-ops, using proper building materials and the proper energy saving plumbing. Number 2, manage landscapes to minimize climate related health impacts. And number 3, environmental equity. Something that I wanted to share really quick is that environmental organizations, in my opinion, should put greater focus on social solutions that are built around people. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
I feel that in terms of making it accessible, so many of the programs are associated with having a home and owning your home. And I think one of the first steps is actually decoupling it from home ownership so that it can be accessible to folks who are renters or in just a different type of a housing situation. Then I would add to that the accessibility, like in my prior answer regarding co-ops in terms of solar access, where renters and folks can have a share in those roofs, even if they aren't installed on the properties in which they live. I would also look to partner with landlords. We do the energy efficiency audits, and I think it would be a prime opportunity to have landlords look at their properties, ensure the efficiency. So many times our utility bills are actually connected to folks not being able to make rent. There was a book, Evicted, in 2016 that it depicted the impact of your utility bill on housing that is secure. So if we can find ways to improve the efficiency of a home, we can also have positive impacts on the security of the renter and the person utilizing that home. I think that's very important. And finally, a seat at the table. All of our renters and like, they're vested Ashland residents, and I feel that they need to be heard. What works for them? Let's bring them into the conversation. They belong there.
Thank you, Paula. Andy.
Yeah, so I've been a renter in Ashland for the past 4 years now. And, the idea of putting a solar panel on my apartment is just not really there unless I really had communication with my landlord. So again, there seems to be a theme here. I love the solar co-op. I think that could really benefit our community. And, the city needs to explore more grants for retrofit projects for maybe people who are low income earners, but perhaps own their house, or for landlords. And that could be grants or loans with low interest rates. Especially depending on the project, especially for the big comprehensive projects, you can do a combination of both, where you have some sort of gap funding from the city and then low interest rate loans for that. And then, third one, we could explore, access to our electric bicycles, but for free, if people who qualify, or have some sort of program where we can give bicycles, not electric bicycles, but just in general, bicycles to those who can afford them, and to kids that are high schools or middle schools, so they can bike to school. We can look at some of those community development programs that I think would really benefit our low income earners and our renters.
Thank you. Jessica.
So I started out by looking into, because like I said, the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to reducing carbons is solar and electric vehicles. And so the SEEP talks about, you know, requiring multi-unit housing to be hooked up for solar vehicles. However, at this time, we haven't generated enough energy with solar panels in order to provide enough energy for these electric vehicles to run. So what we need to do is we need to prepare for electric vehicles, starting out with people that can afford them, and then moving it down to the lower income people. Second, I really like the collaborative consumption. Ashland has this neat like free piles that are everywhere, and it's important to remember that it's better to reuse than to just send something out for recycling or throw it away. Lastly, the community solar. Right now you can purchase, for less than $2, you can get a 0 interest loan to adopt some solar panels. And I think that's just an amazing opportunity for someone with, you know, not great credit, who doesn't own a home, to really like own a piece of Ashland's history. Half the panels are not sold yet, and I think that's an excellent opportunity. We should also be utilizing the solar PPA method, which is just a low cost alternative, or a cost neutral for lower income people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to run a real quick poll. Okay. The current concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, measured in terms of the carbon dioxide equivalent, is closest to which value? 400 ppm, 500, 550, 600? This is greenhouse gases. And I'm going to go ahead and read the final question. Do you think, Paula, you're going to be first on this one. Do you think that the use of natural gas should be reduced in Ashland? If yes, how? If no, why not?
I do believe it should be reduced. It's a fossil fuel. It is not easy to obtain. Fracking has a lot of impacts on our environment. They inject chemicals into these wells. We don't know the impact of that fully yet. We have seen situations of earthquake, and we do know that it uses a lot of our water resources. Moving away from natural gas would also decrease our emissions. So the long answer is yes, I do think we need to move away from it. Now, how do we do that? Our homes and our municipal buildings primarily use natural gas for heat and for heating hot water. So some of the things that are low-hanging fruit that we can do very easily is programmable thermostats that allow us, while not in use, to not be running the heat as high. Flash or solar hot water heaters so that we are not heating water while it's just sitting idle, and also making sure that we have our buildings that are fully efficient, that our heating systems are well maintained. I also think that we already have an excellent program in place in terms of our energy audit. If we use that, we keep our systems running efficiently, and we are able to consume less. And again, lowering our consumption is always the name of the game when we're looking out for our environment.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Andy.
Yeah, we need to curb our use of fossil fuels for sure. And so one way is so how can we electrify a city? So, you know, obviously solar, and to get off of natural gas. So I've owned a restaurant for about 4 years now in Ashland, and we don't use any natural gas for our cooking. In fact, we use convection ovens and induction burners for everything we do. Now, there needs to be some sort of education system around that to, you know, present that to other restaurants. It's going to be a hard sell because, you know, people have installed these huge hoods, you know, for the use of gas ranges, which are very expensive. So how do you do that? So there needs to be some sort of incentive program in place to help our businesses transition and to help our residences as well. You know, so these convection ovens, not only are they fairly cheap, but they're really efficient and easy to use, and they do a great job. You know, another thing we need to look at is just, I guess I've touched on this so many times, just incentive programs via grants or loans or a combination of both. And we need to really have a robust education system on educating the community that these incentives exist. And so those would be some of my biggest strategies for electrifying the city.
Great, Andy, thank you. Jessica.
Well, the city calls for a to be carbon neutral by 2048. So pivoting from natural gas is inherent in that. I think we have to invest in electric vehicle charging stations and prepare actions and initiatives which accelerate fuel switching. I think the retro commissioning incentive program will be key in helping the community make this transition. Additionally, I would like to see people replace their gas furnaces with a heat pump. It's a cheaper alternative. But I still do believe that we should be gathering and storing the natural gas. I think it's going to have uses, but Ashland is a leader in green initiatives, and I think this is a great place for us to start by reducing to eliminating our natural gas use.
Okay, thank you. Gina.
Here we go. Yes, of course. Yes, I do believe the use of natural gas should be reduced. Natural gas is a fossil fuel and a major cause of climate change. And if we want to reduce greenhouse gases, we have to reduce the use of natural gases. Electricity is at the heart of many modern technologies. Electricity is the way to go if we want to get to our 2030, 2050 goals. So yes, we need to reduce them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to share the results before we go to our closing statements from our candidates. We're real champions tonight. I really appreciate all the work you're doing. So we kind of had a split here in terms of the responses, but the most people, the most popular response was 600 parts per million. But the answer is B, 500 parts per million. And Alan Journay tells us that while the concentration of carbon dioxide recently crossed the 400 parts per million value, the total greenhouse gas load is just about 500 parts per million. This tells us why we have to target all greenhouse gases, not just carbon dioxide. And some of you may know one of the leading national and international organizations is called 350.org, which is encouraging us to get down to 350. So we're over 500 right now on our total greenhouse gas load. Okay, so now we are going to have a few minutes for our closing remarks. And did I share we did do that, right? Yeah, okay, we're good. I'm multitasking here, not too bad. Okay, so your closing remarks, you have about a minute and a half. And I want to thank you all for just your work in delivering your message succinctly. It's really great for the audience and for all of us to hear your ideas. So well put together. So thank you. Okay, Andy.
Yes, so thank you for everyone who's joined us today. And, there's been a lot of great ideas laid down on the table. And so I think to move Ashland forward, I think the biggest thing we need to do is secure resources. And that can look like, grants, or how can we divert certain revenues into more, our climate action plan. I think that's going to be the most important thing moving forward. And then secondly, how can we include everyone in the community? That is renters, landlords, homeowners, businesses, the city. We all need to be on the same page. And again, that's going to require incentives. I think human nature reacts positively to incentives. And so that requires more revenue streams. So I think resources is going to be our biggest challenge, but also our biggest opportunity. So if we can secure more resources and funding for all of the programs we have in place and to further our climate action plan, that's really going to be the only way we make a big impact and reach these goals. So as a city councilor, that I really want to be aggressive on finding more grant funding and maybe even like private investments to fuel our investments in the city. That's the only way forward, and that's where I'm going to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Jessica.
I think we should be developing systems and services that provide sustainable jobs and novel services. I don't think the major problem is resources. I think that the major problem is that not everyone in the city agrees that this is a great way to spend the time and money of the council and the city government. I think that what we should be focusing on, or at least myself as a city councilor, would be recruiting more people that aren't currently in politics, educating them about climate, and getting them excited about politics, about voting, and potentially even running for office. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Gina.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you, Lori and SOCAN, for having me. And I'm glad to see the candidates and be here amongst such wonderful people. And I feel that Ashland has done a lot. When I look at compared to what I looked at the grade that Ashland got, I mean, not Ashland, but Oregon got, we got a B when you look at the United States. So I'm pretty proud of our B. And I feel like what we need to do moving forward, I would like to see education, then we educate our community and we get the buy-in, because so many people aren't aware of the need to be aware of Mother Earth and the planet and what we need to do to be sustainable. I believe in empowerment and partnership, because I'm big on collaboration. And when we all come together and we have such good resources right here in our valley, and when we put our heads together and what we have in place already, not just in Ashland, but in our neighboring communities, because we all live in the same home. It's called Earth. So I look forward to hopefully being on City Council so that we can move forward and make great things happen.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Paula.
So when I look at our local challenges and our policy decisions, both those that are currently standing and those that are in front of us, I see them existing under an umbrella of macro issues to our nation. And I think one of those clearly is climate change. And when we look at our challenges and when we make decisions within our municipal government, we need to do so through the lens of climate change each and every time. When we make decisions within our homes, we consider our relationships with our family, parents, children, best friends, and the like. Too often we treat our economy as an asset, as something that is to be used and thrown away. I'm sorry, not our economy. I meant our environment as an asset that is to be used and thrown away. But we need to start treating it more like a relationship. We need to consider it as we make our decisions, like we would consider our families and our friends in our decision-making processes. So going forward, in any role that I would take on in service to Ashland, I feel that that lens of environmental protection and stewardship must be applied. I also want to thank SOCAN tonight for bringing us all together, and the folks who took the time to listen, and for my fellow candidates. Each and every one of you have taken the time and the commitment to step up, not just for this race, but for Ashland, and that is commendable. So I am grateful and humbled to be considered among you all. And thank you for the time and opportunity to listen to your ideas tonight as well. And I look forward to this being the start of a long-term conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we should all celebrate each other. So thank you, everyone, for your great work that you've done and that you will do in the future. So this concludes our climate Zoom with our candidates for City Council positions number 1 and 5. Remember, our candidates for position 1 are Paula Hyatt and Andrew Card. Our candidates for City Council position number 5 are Gina DuQuenne and Jessica Kensinger. And remember, you get to vote for all the seats on the City Council. Thank you again to our Ashland Climate voters who helped develop the questions, were the inspiration for these forums, and who attended tonight and are going to be watching in the future and sharing it with your neighbors. And Kathy Conway from SOCAN has put some more links in there in the chat. And I encourage you all to vote. That might be the most important thing that we do this year. And I want to, those of you who've watched the other two forums that we had, know that we had Barrett O'Brien moderating, who's a theater artist, and he closed us down with an exercise that I really liked, and I'm going to try to capture the magic that Barrett brought us before, which was he urged us to think about the Ashland of the future, Ashland 20 years from now, that imagine ourselves in this place in Ashland that has been incredibly successful in reaching its climate goals, being a leader, having a sustainable, beautiful place for our citizens to live in, and describe what you would see as you walk down the streets or through the neighborhoods of Ashland, and put that in the chat as we close down tonight's program. So it's a beautiful image for you to conjure up. And thank you, Paul.